What's up, everybody on the internet?
Hello.
Hello, comrades.
This is Kenneth Freeman. This is Ann Snellgrove.
Yeah.
I go by Dave or Theory. Welcome to theorypleeb. This is a live stream broadcast of a conversation. Generally speaking. Oh, what the heck? Now I hear myself.
You have it open on your phone.
My phone's like, it's like echoing.
Echo chamber.
Turn off.
Oopsies.
Oops. Anyway, hello, everybody. What were we talking about? Socialism. We're talking about socialism today. I don't brand theorypleeb as a channel as a socialist, propaganda outlet or something like that. It's more of a theory and just, exploring, these kinds of ideas channel. But socialism is valid, and to talk about socialism and to clear the air on what socialism is and to answer commonly asked questions about what socialism is one of the fundamental tasks to deconstructing our own standpoint as that of living in the heart of the capitalist empire, aka the United States of America. How can we know what we're in here without understanding what socialism is? Because pretty much everything about our socially constructed reality in the United States is a response to socialism and trying to basically not be that. So, and in the midst of capitalist realism, what is socialism?
Well, according to a Pew poll, Americans, especially young Americans, have been warming up to socialism since Occupy. And as a founding member of the Boise DSA, I've been astounded at the growth of the organization. We are the big tent on the far left.
Absolutely.
So if you want a cogent leftist pushback, we are it.
And the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, has grown tremendously.
From 5,000 members to more than 50,000?
Literally, because we began a chapter.
Yes, we are founding members. So
actually, so I will just say, before we jump into the midst of it, though, that these live streams typically become available on podcasts for everybody's consumption. They stay online for about a week, and then they are taken off. They're unlisted, which means that you can only get them by asking specifically, like, for a link or by becoming a patron of this channel. But this will be a conversation about this book. This book was put together by a lot of different awesome people who came together through Jacobin and Verso Press, which is one of the biggest publishing houses of leftist theory.
This book, which to my mind is still the best short introduction to the life and work and ideas of Karl Marx, by Isaiah Berlin.
Well, none of us read that. Well, you did.
I read it.
Okay, well, you can unpack it for us. The only thing I was going to say before we dive in is that, that'll be the general basis for the conversation. People in the live chat are welcome to ask their own questions. The PDF, if you want to go to the pages that we'll be on as we go through this, is in the description. But first, let's do introductions by talking about reintroduce yourself with your name, major or interests, passions, kind of like what you're into, where you're coming from, maybe what your background with socialism is. So.
Well, my name is Kenneth Freeman. I'm primarily a Wikipedian. I got involved with this crew via the Victory Farm Center for the Humanities, which was a tremendous salon, la Madame de Stael. And I often joke that I'm 60 and I'm hanging out with kids who read Hegel and I'm making videos about it. I'm exaggerating, but not by much.
I'm going to screen share the thumbnail for this video just right now because it's fitting description of how Kenneth sees himself, I think.
Yeah. Pretty much, I got a Russian soul.
Here we go. There. That's this is my greatest work for sure.
Exactly.
So you're a Wikipedian, you're a longtime socialist. You said you hang out with a lot of a lot of lefties, younger lefties for the most part.
Trump made a leftist of me. I actually joined the DSA on the very day that they voted down net neutrality, which is a totally corporate act of me. No one likes it, except the corporations themselves, and it shifted it towards the cable TV model. And in a nutshell, corporations have far too much power. The wealth disparity is toxic. And capitalism, to say the least, as currently configured, simply is not sustainable. The planet cannot sustain it.
Which can be summarized pretty easily as infinite growth on a finite planet is a contradiction in terms.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And, well, introduction.
Oh, yeah, and pronouns, he, him, right?
He, him, well,
Yeah.
I, thou. Martin Buber. That's what I wanted all time. No one asked me about it. Come on, Martin Buber, people.
That's I will have to do a video on Martin Buber's I Thou eventually.
Well, hello, Internet. You may recognize me. I've been in some Theory Plebe videos. My name is Anne. My pronouns are she, her. For the past couple years, I've just known that I hated capitalism. I didn't really know why. I didn't really, in high school, they talk about socialism and communism and the Cold War, and you kind of see socialism and communism and anarchy as this really bad thing with this, and they definitely shine a bad light on it, and they blame, they blame Karl Marx for the Cold War. It's a real thing. So I think just coming into college and being surrounded by a bunch of leftists of different experiences and ages has really opened my eyes to socialism. I was a big Bernie supporter in 2016. I could not vote back then, but now I am like all for it. And this book is like, it set up like a children's book, like a little picture book for explaining socialism. And it's really helpful. That is what I care about. You said like talk about our major. I'm a social science major studying sociology and political science. So yeah.
Isaiah Berlin said that Karl Marx is the father of sociology, if anyone deserved to be called that. Although he didn't invent the term sociology.
He didn't even identify as a sociologist necessarily.
But he has to be reckoned with.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So hi everybody. I already kind of introduced myself. I use they them pronouns. I genderqueer. I realized over the last couple of days, it's like, why do I say I am when my basic understanding of gender is that it's for the most part performative, and that it's for the most part like that man and woman are really verbs more often than not, that we kind of naturalize as nouns when it's really no, I man, I woman, I non-binary. And so, but the thing is if you say that and people don't know you're verbing, they just think you're being a caveman. I non-binary. Ooh.
But Buckminster Fuller would approve. I think I am a verb.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Wow. That's good. So this book, I want to talk about it for a quick second. Our friend Bert, you've seen Bert with me in the interview with Ian Thompson, if you saw that. I was at Bert's house for that. We also did the Anti-Oedipus reading group together, as well as some other ones last year. Bert had like 6 copies of this that he donated to myself and friends. That was the book that we were reading.
I'm gonna get like 10% out of this, but it's my 10%.
So because this is a podcast, we can't just show things to the screen. We have to explain what it is. So for the people on the air, that was because this is going to be both video and podcast.
Oh, I understand. Well, I just held up a copy of Anti-Oedipus, Capitalism and Schizophrenia by Julius Giuliazzi and Felix Gujarati. Seminal modern
Deleuze and Guattari.
Exactly. Anti-fascist text. And as I said, I got into it. I'm getting like 10% out of this, but it's my 10%. Right?
That's right.
And Hegel, on the other hand, should not be put aside lightly, should be hurled with great force. And I'd inadvertently trolled you.
Yeah, I thought that
you thought I was serious.
Yeah, that was a text you sent me, and I was like, I think Hegel we have to take seriously though, and you were like, I wasn't serious. But speaking of Hegelians and Bert, I just saw Bert today, and we had some food and talked more about Hegel. As always,
Of course.
Marx, the grand inheritor of the Hegelian project, who's quote unquote turned it on its head.
Yes.
Who said, you know, if we want to change the world, we can't just be in the realm of abstraction and ideas. We need to be dealing with the material conditions. That sets the program for scientific socialism as opposed to utopian socialism, a reading that we might
all the precursors, Paul and so on.
Right. Their socialism, according to Marx, was rooted in kind of these lofty terms like liberty, equality, fraternity that, you know, can be exchanged as almost empty words, you know, like they're just like, oh, they stir the soul. But he says at the end of the day, like, are we basing this in morals or are we basing this in like the material conditions? Like, yeah, there's a certain sense in which there's an appeal to, you know, workers should not be alienated from their labor. Maybe like
actual power relationships.
Right. But let's move past like the empty rhetoric and go deeper to why is it that people act the way they act? What and you can't just say, oh, it's just class, you know, class domination. You've got to say, well, how does that function? Well, okay. So, but the thing I wanted to say about this book though is that Bert gave us like 6 copies of it. It was written as a response to the onslaught or like the overwhelming number of emails and questions that Jacobin and Verso Press had received after during and after the 2016 primary season, because there was a renewed interest in socialism. And you mentioned Occupy earlier. Occupy led, you know, that wave kind of receded and that came right back for Bernie Sanders. And so there's a popular dawning of the American consciousness that says, wait, I've always been told this is bad, but what is it? You know, what's the difference between Soviet socialism and the socialism of Denmark and Norway?
There actually is a tremendous intellectual history that goes way beyond a social democracy when we talk about you know, Sweden and so on. And it's really fallen off the radar. The history of the far left in this country, for the most part, is organized labor history. And we did not get the 40-hour work week by asking nicely.
No.
People died. People got their heads busted. And has your Overton window shifted? You want to do some deep thinking? Read Karl Marx. Read about Karl Marx. Bakunin, the great Russian anarchist, and Marx butted heads during the First Internationale in I forget the exact year. And the anarchist and Marxist camps have been at loggerheads ever since.
Right.
But Bakunin was a fine theorist in his own right. He's far more than a caricature. But I think it's fair to say, well, you know, Karl Marx was Karl Marx. Bakunin was punching above his weight. And all of these ideas, which were explored and extrapolated from more than a century ago, they are now again contemporary.
Mm-hmm.
In this era, in this version of capitalism that we have in the U.S., you know, these intellectual tools, these anarchist voices, make sense.
Mm.
So, you know, we are thinking inside the box and we're deconstructing the box.
By the box, you mean what? Capitalism?
Well, capitalism likes to, as it's, one should always pay attention to the propaganda, all right, or the lip service that is being paid. And capitalism pretends to be democratic. It is not. It is innately inegalitarian, not egalitarian. That there has to be some power differential for a machine to work. But when the power differential gets too extreme, a lot of toxic things happen.
Right.
Which is what we're seeing now in this country.
Right.
And the Cold War has distorted all of this.
Yes.
People think of the Soviet Union, the Gulag Archipelago. And there's something to be said for a good, solid dialectic. All right, it's not just some intellectual fancy or, the Kabbalah. It actually works. And you don't have to read Hegel to appreciate this intellectual tradition, this critical theory.
Yes, you do.
And people.
Yes, you. I'm
People
just,
are coming back
I'm just
to it.
kidding. I'm kidding.
People are coming back to it. I will throw that book at you with great force.
Do you have a copy?
I
You have
do
a copy
have
right there. Yeah, don't throw it at me. It's so big, I would probably lose some teeth.
Phenomenology of Spirit. You can actually get this in a smartphone case.
Yeah.
I am so tempted.
So the table of contents of this book is really just a roadmap of questions.
Because I think one thing about this book, it's not like just telling you what socialism is. Rather, it's explaining to you what socialism is through telling you what it's not. And like it's just the whole book just kind of answers common questions and misconceptions, which I think a lot of people were having, as you mentioned, like after the 2016 election, when people started wondering, what is socialism?
That just happened.
Basically, debunking everything that we've been taught in our history classes and all the, anti-socialist propaganda we've known all our lives.
So there's basically 13 questions. I'll be happy if we hit on half of them.
Mm-hmm.
This live stream is casual. We're just chilling. I'm passing through Boise for like one day and thought this would be a cool chance to be able to connect with Kenneth before Ann and I take off. But,
well, let's bite the bullet.
Which one do you think you want to lead off with here, Kenneth?
Doesn't socialism always end up in dictatorship?
Ooh, where is that one?
Page
52.
52.
So yeah, and if you've just joined, the link is in the description if you want to look at the PDF for this book. Okay, 52. Well, and I think that question right there is probably one of the most commonly asked.
I mean, that is like not even just dictatorship, but corruption in general. And that's the go-to whenever you're talking about socialism. People who doubt it go,
it's a reflex.
the Venezuela.
It's a reflex.
Mm-hmm.
It's a reflex. But to be fair, Marx himself was a born authoritarian every bit as much as Andre Bacon, the great surrealist.
Mm-hmm.
And
mm-hmm.
Bakunin knew this very well, and he's very prescient in saying that Marx's authoritarian program would lead to dictatorship and bureaucracy, which is what happened with Lenin and the USSR.
Right, which the propaganda, for any lie to be compelling, it has to use a little bit of truth. And so the propaganda, popularized by especially the CIA in this country, is that that socialism is totalitarianism, and that they back that up by looking at moments when self-professed socialism was totalitarian. And so the examples are obviously going to tend to be Soviet Russia and Mao's China, but this version of history ignores theorists like Rosa Luxemburg and Victor Serge and lots of Serge, I don't know how to say it out loud, and lots of these other people who were adamantly pro freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of assembly, freedom of battle of opinions.
Rosa Luxemburg at all.
She's who says that without those freedoms, life in every public institution withers away, becomes a caricature of itself, and bureaucracy rises as the only deciding factor. These kinds of socialist theorists were huge critics of Soviet rule, banning opposition to parties,
and amongst the first victims of the regime.
Yes, and subsequently, Rosa Luxemburg was murdered.
Mm-hmm. And I think just like the very first paragraph of this section, it talks about a generation of Americans have been taught that the Cold War was one fought between freedom and tyranny, and that socialism was conflated with the crimes of the Soviet Union and doomed to the trash heap of bad ideas. Yet many socialists were consistent opponents of authoritarianism of both left and right varieties. So, I mean, I guess the rest of this chapter almost says that capitalism more is inherently undemocratic than socialism, which is also another chapter in itself.
Right. If you have, yeah.
Yeah, we don't recognize this because any more than a fish recognizes water in which it swims. All right. But the capitalist argument that individual choice in the market equals freedom masks the reality that capitalism is an undemocratic system, and the light bulb goes on above your head.
Yeah. What are
The
some
actual power
examples?
relationship.
Let's imagine I was Joe Schmo, never, thought about this, walked into the comment section, or, watching this video for the first time. Why? Why is capitalism not democratic? Don't we live in a democracy?
Okay, well, in a democracy, you would have the choice to, for example, pursue, let's say Joe Schmo is a beautiful artist and wants to pursue art for his life. Joe Schmo is not going to make enough money to be able to do that. And under capitalism, it's pretty much you're forced to work in whatever conditions the job that you're able to find offers you, or you're homeless and you're broke and you can't afford to eat. And people say, oh, if you don't like your job, if you don't like your boss, just quit. But under capitalism, there's really no choice. You don't have a choice to not work for 40 hours, at least 40 hours a week. Some people don't have a choice to not be working 2 jobs. So you say, oh, you can work wherever you want. But like inherently, it's not democratic and you don't have the choice to not work or to pursue your passion.
Right. So the formal categories: freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of the press. The problem with liberal freedoms is that they just don't go far enough. They don't extend into practical life when it comes to things like freedom to be able to pursue your passions, to be able to cultivate your interests, to be able to work with your community, to be able to sustain the kinds of relationships that human beings should be able to have. No, you have to work, and the only freedom you have is to choose which master you work for.
Yeah. Yes. And we are really discussing the nature of human nature.
Well, maybe I might want to argue with you, but you have to explain what you mean, I guess. Because what do you mean by human nature?
Well, capitalism's premise is that everyone wants to maximize value, and everything has been distilled down to capital. The price of everything, but the value of nothing. Mm-hmm. All right, and socialism prevents. That's a nice Freudian slip. Socialism presents an alternative, or at least a potential alternative to that. And socialism sounds good in theory, but doesn't human nature make it impossible to realize? Page 31.
Right, that's another one of the big questions. Right, and so the basic idea is that so I don't know, we don't have to believe in human nature to take it seriously, because what do we even mean by that in the first place? We can stipulate a definition that we agree on.
It is a commodious term.
Yeah, how about we just say that, in a human population, any human population, there's going to be tendencies of greed, tendencies of compassion, whatever. So there's a whole array of different things. Adam Smith, the father of economics and of capitalism, so-called, he said that there, within every person, there's like this part of you that's like a wolf, this part of you that's like a dove. He's talking about how there's different kind of parts of the human spirit, and that part that wants status, it wants recognition, it wants to be better than others. He said, listen, we could try to squash it, but we should instead just figure out a way that can benefit us all. So he thought that in capitalism, that's a productive way for people to exercise that part of their nature or whatever. Socialism, communism, anarchism, these alternatives tend to have a different take on that.
A more egalitarian take.
Yeah, one that says that maybe we shouldn't be cultivating and encouraging, incentivizing the worst aspects of the human, celebrating that, saying that makes you a fucking hero. right?
Yeah.
What are you going to do with that major? Are you going to fuck other people over? No? Well, then you're wasting your life.
Yeah.
So, yep.
That just left
Every-
us speechless. Yep.
Everything in proportion. I mean, to my mind, capital is a good servant but a poor master. It's a matter of degree and granularity. And
Right.
capitalism has become cancerous if it's not a cancer to begin with. You know, I'm not a doctrinaire socialist. I'm a religious socialist by way of Cornell West.
It's fantastic.
And
Okay.
I happen to agree with Václav Havel, who said that consciousness precedes being and not the other way around, as the Marxists believe. And that's the result of his life experience under the Czechoslovak regime, back when there was one country. So, you know, in this regard, I am very much an idealist. You know, not a materialist. But that said, this whole intellectual panoply of stacks of anarchistic, socialist and anarchistic literature, and these tools are available, intellectual tools are available to us today. Stuff that was written 150 years ago is astoundingly
I'm showing
contemporary.
on screen. I'm showing some of the stacks of books he's working through right now. So you're saying that regardless of the fact that you're an idealist, you still find use in these tools developed by these people. So
Yes,
Okay.
it does explain a good chunk of reality.
cool.
And you know, I'm not one who has, you know, discovered Marx and this is the master key. I mean,
Right.
you know, infighting is a pastime amongst leftists.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we had a dude on the Capitol steps marching back and forth, shouting, "Death to the left, death to the left." A friend of mine saw us. What's left?
A friend of yours saw this?
Yes.
Yeah, which left?
Yeah. What's left? I mean, you know how much infighting we do?
Yeah.
If you want to fight a leftist, become one yourself.
Yeah, if you really want to fight.
All right? So the cops had a chat with him and he calmed down very quickly. So I am not doctrinaire and I don't pretend to be.
Oh, side note, by the way, River Ransom in the comments. What's up, River, by the way? Hi.
Hi.
It's good to look at Bernard Mandeville's take on human nature when thinking about Adam Smith's work. Smith was very upset by Mandeville's The Fable of the Bees and tried to respond in real time. Oh, cool. I got to look into that. I didn't know about this. Let me close off the question we were on, by the way. Doesn't socialism always end up in dictatorship? This chapter, they give some examples historically of where people are getting that from, but then they respond to that basically being like, obviously, there's different ways of putting socialism into practice. And they're real socialists of the brand that are writing in this book say socialists fight for economic democracy out of the radical belief that what touches all should be decided by all. So if we socially produce wealth, we socially earn and have claim to a slice of that wealth. If we are socially, essentially, if civilization is a social thing, then it should be shared socially, not privately. But that leads to the
social justice.
What's the question that follows that about property, right?
The
one about the records.
52. Because so each chapter starts with the question, and then like the very last page, I don't want to say has an answer, but kind of has like a closing thought. So I will just say that this one says socialism is often conflated with authoritarianism, but historically, socialists have been among democracy's staunchest advocates.
This is very true in the fight with civil rights.
I think 46 is the natural follow-up. Jesus,
What's wrong
kitty.
with you?
Okay, I'm sorry, everybody. This cat is freaking out. It's just
Very unusual behavior.
well,
There you go.
maybe she's never been on live stream before.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Page 47 is the natural follow-up to what I just said about collective wealth, because when you say that, people get their heebie-jeebies because they were educationally stultified in high school. They weren't given access to basic distinctions, such as the distinction between private property or private belongings and private property. Private belongings are your
Personal property.
the things you use that would exist in any society ever in all of humanity. But this gets juxtaposed to private property, where you have a corporation that can buy up 100 acres and then not use it and not allow other people to be on it, or destroy it, sell it, or just destroy it and get rid of it, and make everybody who's downstream have to suffer the consequences, which obviously that's pretty normal.
Yeah.
So yeah, will socialists take my Kenny Loggins records?
That may be the most important question of all.
Yeah, or rather, just well, do we get personal property under socialism, or are they gonna take away all my shit because I own it privately? And I think like under socialism, it's not like, I mean, one of the sentences in this first page is, we simply don't want a world without personal property, the things meant for individual consumption. Instead, socialists strive for a society without private property, the things that give the people who own them power over those who don't. And that's like one of the biggest things about socialism is, we don't want like the capitalists owning our work, owning our labor, owning our time, owning land, owning,
human capital to be exploited.
Yes.
Right. Or, if everyone's being incredibly productive on average, then we shouldn't see it becoming the case that more and more people have to work more and more to own less and less all the time. Right. Instead, we're all becoming renters. We're all becoming subscribers.
Yeah.
And the prices for the things that we're becoming reliant on are just going up. For instance, why is the cost of phone service and Wi-Fi going up? That's because we haven't seized that and made it just something that is a commonly owned product of our society's wealth that everyone relies on, when obviously
it's not regarded as a public utility legally. It's not.
Yeah, there's actually a quote near the beginning, I think probably in the preface, that I remember from earlier, that basically says that this person's vision of socialism is just that a lot of these things shouldn't be run like businesses, meaning that they are, almost entitlements that can be bought and sold. No, there are a lot of things like education, healthcare, internet, access to public infrastructure like internet or buses, transportation, the ability to freely move. These are things that are fundamental freedoms. These are things that would be fundamental freedoms if we lived in a free society.
Yeah. These are what the military calls force multipliers. If you have a comprehensive education and it's spread throughout society, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Oh, right.
So, and some things should not be treated like businesses, schools and so on.
Yes.
It brings us back to corporations having too much power.
Yeah.
Or inappropriate power.
Well, the money in politics, the quote unquote money in politics, right? Is that what you mean?
Yes. There are several candidates for the next congressional election, Brianna Wu and so on, and Elizabeth Warren, who do not accept money from PACs. All right, and this has become something of the standard for for the Democratic Party. What is the left?
For the progressive,
their left.
Progressive Democrats now
Yes.
are supposed to
Yes.
refuse those things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. What side are you on? What side are you on? What side are you on? So that's the thin edge of that's the thin edge of the wedge. The Obama administration was accused by the right of being socialistic, if not just socialist. And both the DSA and the Obama administration said, no, you're mistaken. That's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
But the DSA, and this is before it exploded, got more publicity from that knee-jerk word, socialism, than they had in years and years.
Mm.
And then we had Occupy, we had Bernie Sanders, and we have Trump, and all of these issues, public health issues. What do we need to live as decent human beings? What do we need to have a decent society?
Mm.
Mhm.
All right. And socialist thought addresses these structural issues. Coming up with a viable alternative is another matter. But no one's ever done it this way before, socialism. But maybe put the fork in sideways before you put it into the outlet and see what happens, right? But we're in the marketplace of ideas. What was once verboten or bad form, it's all on the table.
Right. Like, which is what my one video, my remix for the State of the Union address is about. Really, when I show that, I'm just going to show it right now, actually.
Oh my God.
Because I can. Not just because I can, but because it's relevant. Some of the statistics that you cited earlier there's a couple more to that are really good here that are fitting. So I'm going to pull that up so I can share the screen. And I'm going to do that. Looks, I gained some new subscribers since the last time I looked.
Oh, lovely.
Wow. Good job.
We renew
Great choices, people. Some people have good taste.
People are
what can I
doing
say?
deep thinking. They want this material,
Yes.
and they're following the intellectual path.
Here we go. I'm going to share it. Yes, there is, right? There's that distinction between the populist left and the intellectual left, which is maybe not fair sometimes, but we can get back to it. I'm going to play this really quick. It's only 41 seconds. So.
Sure. Go
We
ahead.
renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country.
It goes.
More Americans view socialism positively than there are Republicans. Gallup 2018. 15% of millennials prefer socialism to capitalism. Gallup 2018.
And we aren't going anywhere.
We aren't going anywhere. So for those who couldn't see, Donald Trump was giving the State of the Union address, and then when he says that, it actually cut to Bernie, kind of being
like
broody.
everyone in the audience is like, right, and Bernie's just like, we all know what Bernie's thinking now.
Oh my God, Catherine! Thank you. Catherine said that's her favorite of my videos, and that it made them a sub. So River also, thanks y'all.
Thank y'all.
My best video is my shortest video of all. Go figure. No, it was actually probably one of the most fun ones I've done, for sure.
That you stayed up until like 3 a.m. editing.
Yeah, Anne was there, and I just, you saw the beginning when I first started, and I just like took over like 14 hours of my life. I was just like,
it's not.
I had to learn a lot of stuff. Well, I had to come back to it the next day to finish. Yeah.
Okay,
So
14 hours.
it was basically, yeah, it was. I had to learn a lot of new things for that one, which is what the main reason it took so long. Now I just know that stuff. So.
The kids have bandwidth. The kids will have bandwidth.
Is that a song?
Bandwidth.
I told Kenneth recently that his reference, that I think 99% of his references are over my head.
Well, that's because I have 3 decades on you, young man.
True, not a man, but yes, true.
And also, I'm fucking abstruse. It's just the way I'm built.
Yeah, no, that's all right. But I just have to let people know it's expected at this point. So, but if you get them, get in the comments and let us know that you at least get it. So, what are 2 more questions to touch on? I want to read off a list of these. Doesn't socialism always end up in dictatorship? We did that one. Is socialism a Western concept? What about racism? Don't socialists only care about class? Aren't socialism and feminism sometimes in conflict?
They've had a fraught relationship. Let's dig into that.
Well, that's because liberals love to recuperate, revolutionary spirit into their own end of history, fucking redistributist corporate, scene. And, so there's like this constant friction between those who want to go around and like accuse individuals of not being anti-racist enough or anti-patriotic.
Not anti-racist enough? What do you mean? I need detail.
Right? Or when they're ultimately just liberal in the first place, right? And to them, all that means is shutting other people down. It has nothing to do with, collectively seizing the means of production in this world in a way that would be able to stop destroying nature and hopefully eliminate created poverty, right? Systemic poverty, at least.
Yeah.
The poverty of the human soul, though, you can't get out of that one. You just if you're an impoverished human soul, what can we do? I'm sorry, I'm just kidding. That's what I'm not an idealist, so.
I'm more of an idealist than you.
True. So I'll let you take that one.
Well, I can't carry it further than I've quoted Václav Havel, and can't carry that any further right now.
Yeah, I would. So for me, actually, I do like to use the human soul metaphorically speaking. When I talk about my biggest problem with capitalism, besides its into the planet, to nature itself, to ecological reproduction, my biggest problem is about what are the conditions necessary for even having a healthy human life? What are the conditions necessary for ensuring the attainment of those kinds of things that give us meaning? Or, and a big part of it is time, energy, and attention as the potential, preconditions for being able to put meaningful, sustained effort into our projects, into our talents. And in a world that doesn't center that and doesn't think that itself in general is the most important basis for a civilization, we're fucked.
We are questioning our own premises. We are questioning premises that we didn't even know were premises. And that's deeply frightening. That's an ontological shift. No wonder people are wigging out.
An ontological shift is what?
It's an ontological shift. The nature of society is changing. A fundamental consensus has been lost in this country. And it's deeply, deeply frightening, not only to me, but also to 20-somethings. The ground is shifted beneath their feet. And we are drowning in an ocean of our own making now.
Literally, because of climate change.
Yes. The ice is melting. And what do you do with that fast? How do you slow it down?
Yeah, especially when you have these wannabe middle of the roadsters like Biden constantly being pushed in the news on us as though he's a fucking option, which is absolute insanity. But you mentioned Elizabeth Warren earlier not taking PAC money. I just saw this video today. It was pretty much the same clip I just showed you all of the State of the Union address, but it zooms further and it shows Elizabeth Warren standing up for that part to clap for capitalism and saying that the U.S. will never be a socialist country. So at the end of the day, it seems like Elizabeth, what's the real difference between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders as you understand it? Is it just that the one says they are for socialism and the other one says they are for capitalism, but that basically as progressives that their goals are the same?
Warren does say and admits that she is a capitalist to her bones, but she is addressing structural issues.
Right.
And that's necessary, but not sufficient.
River Ransom says Warren is focused on markets.
Quote unquote markets.
Quote unquote markets.
The great shibboleth, the markets. The market would take care of everything. It would take care of us all.
Which is neoliberalism in a nutshell, is just saying the market can take care of us.
On the market, we don't care because we don't have to.
Right, and the whole point of markets is that they operate on scarcity. So if we're talking about health or education as markets, then there's a necessary and artificial scarcity created.
Wrong paradigm. Wrong paradigm. Exactly.
Yeah. I could we have a market for things where there's like, okay, there's literally only so much of this on the planet to go around. Let's just say, in the classic anti-utopian argument, say if for people who are like for the Venus Project or whatever, like the one of the most important kind of questions that will come up for the sort of utopian socialist is, well, what do you do with like the best real estate? What do you do with the lakeside property? Everyone wants it. So if you collectivize everything, how are you going to keep everyone from destroying that or from fighting over who gets to have that or opening up some new black market to be able to get access to it?
There are several communities that have addressed this issue of living space being bought up for investment purposes, not for people to live in, but just to be sold later on at a higher price, of course. And housing is a basic human right. If you don't have housing, you don't have medical care. You don't have a lot of things.
Right, but if we have faceless bureaucratic institutions that are supposed to be providing us with our housing, we're all going to end up in like what the low-income housing apartment complexes where it's bare minimum bullshit and everyone lives on top of each other. Is that the best that bureaucracies are capable of providing? If so, I would be like, well, I'm against it. I'm capitalist. But the thing is there's no fucking reason to believe that that would be the way that it would be. That's just a capitalist talking point. There's no reason to believe it's true. And the answer I would use to the person who brings up the nicest spot on the lake as an example to be like, oh, gotcha. Well, yeah, there's 1,000 alternatives to the way that we do things. And there's all sorts of ways that we can make it so that access to, a vacation stay at the best place on the lake just becomes a thing. Everyone can get a certain base number of credits every year to be able to use on the different kinds of nice spots that there are. There'd be a reservation process, so you have to do it ahead of time. And then, if you do something good or if you want to like earn extra achievements in the social currency system, then you'd be able to get access to these awesome places. It's like right here in Boise, for instance, we have these awesome little like cabins that are up in the mountains. There's not that many of them. How do we manage that? Right? Like people want them all year round. Well, we manage somehow, and we can manage that under any other system. We just have to make sure that we, on the one hand, value it, know that we value it, want our access to it, and then fight for that access and don't give up on that, because that's the whole thing is like, just because you don't like bureaucracy doesn't mean bureaucracy goes away if you start to ignore it. If you ignore it, it takes over your life more than ever. Period. And that, the leftist critique of bureaucracy is really important to maintain, right? And you mostly get that from the anarchist side.
Well, yes, I was just about to say, back to Bakunin.
Yeah. And I read David Graeber's book, what is it called? The Utopia of Rules. And the Utopia of Rules is basically him saying, we haven't had a serious, we need to revive the critique of bureaucracy in this country, because right now the right has monopolized that critique and they don't do a very good job.
No, they don't. They don't have intellectual news.
Yeah. Yeah. For the right, it's just, oh, bureaucracy bad, big bureaucracy bad. have small bureaucracy. And it's like, yeah, but the thing about bureaucracy is that sometimes the smaller bureaucracies are the more tyrannical bureaucracies because you've gutted them of the necessary means to have checks and balances. Because you actually, a bigger bureaucracy could be a smoother running bureaucracy. The question is how it's run.
Anyone who's dealt with the homeowners board knows this.
Really? Yeah, like you mean just like any homeowners association or something?
Oh, that's the reputation.
Let's hit the comments. And each of you look for the last question you want to address in here while I read off these comments. Young Simba says, there's no market solution to homelessness, malnutrition, especially for children, equal opportunities for education, etc. And I would agree and just add that you know, the malnutrition in this country is obviously correlated with a decrease of ecological diversity and the nutrients in the soil, or just soil in general. If you're just growing on dirt and, you know, bringing in fertilizers from afar, which tends to be what we do now, you're not replenishing the earth. You're just constantly stripping it. Right. That's what we did. Was we've come to this country. We stole this land from people who had taken care of it, and we have absolutely destroyed the topsoil in this country. The topsoil was a gold mine, and it's already mostly gone. And we just aren't prioritizing the future. So you know, we're looking out for the bottom line right now, which is profit. But like the bottom line should be well-being, obviously, but it should also be if let's just say that you're a selfish person who just wants to look out for profit after all, and you want to have cheap commodities right now. Yeah, even we could even appeal to your self-interest to say, yeah, but what about in 70 years? Shouldn't we at least have topsoil in 70 years?
Right.
Shouldn't that be a necessary condition of maintaining that land? Yeah.
What if a real bad person who wanted to do real bad things, as Alexander Ocasio-Cortez said, in regard to the political process and lobbyists, and the same thing metaphorically, the stripping and destroying the topsoil.
Actually, yeah, the way we are towards soil and the way we turn it into dirt without replenishing it is a perfect metaphor of what we do to human lives in capitalism. How we're parasitical off of human bodies and undermining the ability for human souls. Human souls and, you know, the earth soil, these are both things that require cultivation. They both require time, energy, and attention. Because capitalism is about taking the surplus wealth from something and moving it elsewhere, it's the exact same function, the exact same thing going on there.
Isn't there a whole field, eco-socialism?
Yeah, and there's a lot of eco-socialist chapters for DSA.
Yeah.
I don't know about other, you know, if the PSL has their own or what. I don't know.
No, we're too small. We're like, you know, 20 people.
Most of the Marxist-Leninists I've met care more about. They tend to maybe mention the ecology, but they don't tend to center it. So I'm just putting that out there. You know, send me information if you know of if you know that that's not true, or that Marxist-Leninists actually, like, it's right there in the program. I guess maybe I should look that up before I speak about it. But I'm just going off of PSL people here in town. It's like that tends to not be the focus, and it was, you know, for Marx to some degree. He brings it up sometimes, but not nearly as much as it's becoming.
Not systematically. No.
It was. I mean, he talks about, you know, primitive accumulation. Primitive accumulation, meaning like we tend to just look at the way wealth is distributed and earned, or, you know, earned now. Well, how was it originally, you know, divvied up? It was divvied up by pure violence and
extraction.
Yeah, the state saying, oh, all of this land that you can just freely wander through and use at your own disposal as long as you're respectful to it. Nope, you're not allowed to anymore. You have to buy it, you know. And oh, we're gonna actually just give off large tracts of land to these people that we favor, which tends to be the way states function. Let's see. River Ransom says, I think Warren sees socialism as possible to allow a form of neoliberalism to continue. She started as Republican because she thought they best defended markets and switched to Democrat, seeing they were seeing they were
They were
actually. Nicholas Baker says neither Bernie nor Warren can do much to change the system. A third party, like a Labor Party, is needed to raise class consciousness. The working class should take charge, not a bureaucracy. I mean, how does the working class take charge of something for a sustained period of time without it becoming a bureaucracy is an important question. Wouldn't it just be a wouldn't it be a working class owned and run bureaucracy that we're talking about? And so I guess my understanding of bureaucracy is really just like what happens with the institutionalization of various behaviors, right? And if we're going to institutionalize certain behaviors, it turns into a bureaucracy. Maybe I'm wrong, but right?
And bureaucracies never give up power.
Right. But the other thing is that, like, what's the alternative to that? Because the institutionalization of habits, of a set of habits or behaviors within a society, is the only way that you're going to maintain whatever that is, whatever program that is, for a longer period of time, right? So I mean, I feel like that's that for me. I'm almost, I guess, a bureaucratic realist. You know, like a capitalist realist, but instead of bureaucratic realist, I just think that bureaucracies are like a
necessary evil,
unavoidable for now. And I would just say that's my in-system answer, because if we could figure out ways to like
unavoidable for now. Unavoidable for now. What is the tipping point then? What is the swirl pump, the center of gravity? How do we get away from bureaucracy?
That's what I want to know.
That's the $10,000 question.
Right. Yeah. And the other part is like, how can we have an anarcho-syndicalist or anarcho-socialist, communist, whatever, future where I don't have to go to a lot of meetings, right? Like I'm one of the ones who's really interested in the answer to that question and what different people's answers to it looks like.
As Oscar Wilde said, the trouble with socialism is it takes the meetings to take up too many evenings.
Yeah, yeah, and you get what are a lot of meetings? It's a lot of personality politics. You're dealing with people, you know, in your local area, and it's like, well, like Slavoj Žižek says, I don't want to have to sit on a council that continuously has to decide various decisions about how the waste, water is treated.
It takes a lot of diligent work.
Yeah,
and it's exhausting.
How about bureaucracies that fade into the background? That's what one of the arguments I've heard is that when Marx says the withering away of the state, he doesn't mean the state goes away. It just means it fades into the background and becomes like this. It's just like not a problem anymore. Yeah.
Well, it's like electricity. No one walks into a room anymore and asks, "Is this place electrified?" All right. Nowadays, no one walks into a room and says, "Do we have Wi-Fi? Do we have bandwidth? Do we have?"
I was when I got here, by the way, which is why we were late, because we couldn't get online. But generally speaking,
I remember the password. But the bureaucracy will become like the internet or electricity. It'll become like the paint or the wallpaper. It'll always be there, but you won't see it unless you want to.
Mm.
So how that withering away takes place, God knows. But we are in a period of volatility not seen since the 60s, if then.
Which is what Nancy Fraser said in the interview I just posted.
And the future is unwritten.
All right, we got to close this out. We got 5 minutes each.
Don't look at me first.
So I'll just say that young Simba said Marxist-Leninists of Cuba and Vietnam care a whole bunch about climate change because they're both low elevation countries. Here in the West, I don't know. Yeah, and I would, generally speaking, the global South is what's affected worst by
very much so.
Yes.
Ecological devastation. And right on top of that, Catherine says also expropriation is what highly developed countries tend to do. Expropriation being taking without replenishing. Exploitation is where you replenish just enough to keep exploiting.
Exploitation.
Yeah, so expropriation is where you're not replenishing, and that is what we tend to do to the global South. Absolutely. And that's been the history now for 500 years. So, approximately speaking, because I'm not a historian, but River Ransom says canceling student debt would be a pretty transformative change to the system in multiple ways. One of the big issues of affecting us all globally is the new aristocracy powered by multinational corporations. Absolutely. This book that Kenneth is holding up, Debt, The First 5,000 Years by David Graeber, absolutely important. I would say that should be in anyone's top 10 primer kits for getting into socialist and anarchist kind of stuff.
Yes,
the history of debt is fundamental.
Oh yes, exactly. I think he overstates his case, but he goes at it at an angle that I've never seen before, and it's an anthropological take.
Yeah, it's an
history of debt.
The anthropological deconstruction of neoliberalism. That's really what Debt, The First 5,000 Years is. River Ransom says, I am biased to thinking bureaucracy is good. Actually, it does tend towards entropy and corruption, as regular people do not have to participate. Yeah. So how do we institutionalize renewed human spirit into the bureaucracies? That's an interesting question, I think, that your comment brings up, River. Catherine says, I think it depends on the type of bureaucracy. Yeah, good. River says they're going to pick up David Graeber's book, so I guess David Graeber owes me a commission. Just kidding. I will be doing some videos on debt within the next year, maybe within the next few months. I've been thinking a lot about that book for a couple of years now, and it's formed kind of my own attitude towards debt. Yes, I should make a reading list, Catherine. In fact, you are so right. I'm going to go back in time and do that already on my.
I don't already have one.
Yeah, it's on my Goodreads. So if you just look up theorypleeb on Goodreads, and you will find at least one of my reading lists. I think I might have two. I've done a couple of reviews. My longer term goal is to do reviews for all the books that I talk about. So, or that
a worthy endeavor.
Yep. All right. Closing statements, everybody.
Capitalism is killing the planet. I think that combating climate change as humans should be our #1 issue. And like one of the questions in this book is, wouldn't a more democratic world just mean a bigger environmental crisis? Which I think is the absolute opposite, because I think in a society and in a system where we are not valuing capital and money as the #1 thing, then we won't need to, deplete the resources and take them as much as we are right now. I know like Fraser and Yagi in the Capitalism Conversation in Critical Theory talked a lot about, maybe not a lot, but they did talk about climate change, and I can't get into all of it right now, but overall, like, we need something, even under capitalism, that's like our biggest thing right now, and with socialism, I feel like it could be a lot better, and there would be more solutions, and that's what I have to say.
Okay, and if you are a political activist or Joe's Six-Pack and don't want to be ad tracked on the internet, the torproject.org is the browser.
TOR, torproject.org.
Very robust anonymity for everyone.
I actually just shared a video from my channel. If you go to the community section of my channel today, I shared a video about internet privacy and debunking the myth.
I watched that.
Did you? Yeah.
Yes.
Debunking the myth that VPNs actually offer you the security they promise that they offer. They might be a useful part of a package for privacy protection, but they are not the end all.
They're not a panacea.
Pretend to be.
Your privacy is more configurable than you may realize, and it's as much an essential need as housing or medical care, arguably. And finally, on my semi-infinite pile of books, I shall be posting the titles and so on.
Yeah, post it in the comments.
Yeah.
I'll pin your comments.
I'm getting organized. I really am.
You've been organizing a lot in here. I can see that.
Despite being chaotic, good.
Also, Kenneth and I met through Democratic Socialists of America. I would just leave off. He said it's a big tent leftist org. I would just say this, and I heard American Johnson say the same thing, but we've been saying it in the DSA for like the last year and a half. Big tent just means that it's pretty much liberals and everyone left of liberals. Liberals are the minority. Marxist-Leninists are a minority. Anarchists are a minority. Who's the majority then? Well, really, we're so fractured that there's so many different there's so many different colors represented. That you get a lot of diversity of thought depending on the chapter. Obviously, it really does depend on the chapter, but it's kind of like Subway or Pita Pit. Like if you don't like what you walk away with that you bought, it's kind of like your own fault because you kind of chose what goes on it. Your DSA chapter is very much the same. It really just depends on who shows up regularly.
Yes.
If you don't show up regularly,
Yes.
then yeah, you have no say. I haven't been showing up regularly for quite some time because I'm moving. So, I'll have to like focus elsewhere. But the thing is like
half of success is just showing up.
Yeah.
Yes.
And as a result, the people who run things tend to be busybodies with time on their hands to sit through things. And it's kind of a sad thing. Like this, like Boise itself is run by pretty much retired old men and old women who have nothing better to do than sit in all of these, city hall meetings. And we're all, we want to get engaged. We want to be citizens that are doing the responsible thing and seizing that discourse, like we should be. But oh no, we're told to go get full-time jobs. And then, when do they have the meetings? Oh, while we're working.
It is a difficult task. It's not easy to get into the nuts and bolts of administration, of politics. But there's a saying in the military that amateurs discuss strategy, professionals discuss logistics. And that's what we're getting into now.
And that's definitely the direction I want to be going with politics. Is basically, I've been thinking like I'm not a policy wonk, but from now on, whenever I'm in the presence of one, I'm just going to ask them lots of questions and have them break things down for me and act real stupid because I am real stupid. And I guess I just want to know more about people's strategies and people's policies and really like if they're not for this one kind of change, like say they're not for revolution, they're incrementalist, then I guess I just really want to get to the nuts and bolts of what they fucking mean by that, and vice versa. Yeah, and vice versa as well. People who think you can just cut the heads off the hydra and then flowers will bloom. No, it's not that easy. And so you can't change a society overnight because the human beings that reproduce it, they don't go away unless you kill them all, or when their hearts somehow or what is the solution? I'm very curious about it. And so for right now, the best compromise or straightforward way of at least organizing with some other lefties like Kenneth, like Ann, is just to track down a DSA. If you have to drive an hour, I highly recommend it. It's like church. It's like church for people who are leftish. Think about it that way.
That's such a good description.
It's church. All right. Well, with that, I'm gonna go. I just want to say I'll be doing a live stream with me, just me, not these two. I'll be doing a live stream in about 10 or 20 minutes with Kiwi and Scooter from the King and Queen of Losers. That's a fantastic channel if you haven't checked it out. We did the one with Faraday Speaks on X-Right recently. So it was a riot. It's really funny. They're funny people. I'm gonna have fun with that. And so if you're interested in that, it should be live soon. I'm gonna head to their house right now. Just go check out the King and Queen of Losers on YouTube if you haven't subscribed. Then do it!
Do it.
Okay, love y'all. Take care. Bye-bye.